The screaming sirens pierced through the morning air like daggers through silk. Marcus Rodriguez gripped the steering wheel of Bus 47 tighter, his prosthetic left hand clicking against the worn plastic as armored vehicles swarmed around him like metal vultures. Red and blue lights bathed the interstate in a hellish strobe. And somewhere behind him, 37 third graders pressed their faces against windows, watching their ordinary Tuesday morning transform into a nightmare. "Driver, stop your vehicle immediately!" The voice boomed through a megaphone, distorted and aggressive. "This is ATF Agent Harrison. You are suspected of weapons trafficking. Pull over now." Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. In the rearview mirror, little Amy Peterson had started crying. Her Superman lunchbox clutched to her chest like a shield. Behind her, Tommy Chen was filming everything on his phone, his 8-year-old eyes wide with terror and fascination. The absurdity of it all crashed over Marcus like a tidal wave. Weapons trafficking him. The man who couldn't even open a jar of pickles without help. "Kids, everything's going to be fine," Marcus called over his shoulder, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "We're just going to pull over and clear up a misunderstanding." But even as he spoke those words, Marcus knew this was no misunderstanding. This was Karen Whitmore's handiwork. He'd seen her this morning at the Riverside Elementary pickup zone, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing at her phone screen as she watched him load the donated instrument cases into the back of the bus. Her pale blue eyes had narrowed with that familiar mixture of disdain and suspicion that had haunted him since he'd started working this route 6 months ago. 30 minutes earlier, the morning had been beautiful. Marcus had arrived at Riverside Elementary at 7:15 sharp, just as he had every day for the past 6 months. The autumn air was crisp, painting his breath in small puffs as he performed his pre-trip inspection. His prosthetic hand moved efficiently along the bus exterior, checking lights and tires with the same methodical precision he'd learned in the Army before the IED in Afghanistan had changed everything. Principal Jennifer Martinez had been waiting for him in the parking lot, her arms wrapped around a steaming coffee cup, her smile genuine and warm. "Morning, Marcus. Ready for the big delivery?" "Yes, ma'am. The Harmony Foundation donated some beautiful instruments. These kids are going to lose their minds when they see them." The Harmony Foundation's donation had been a miracle for Riverside Elementary. The underfunded school had been without a music program for 3 years, its instruments long since sold to pay for basic supplies. But last month, Marcus had written a letter to the foundation, explaining how music had saved his life during his recovery from his injuries, how learning to play guitar with one hand had taught him that limitations were just starting points for creativity. The foundation's response had been overwhelming. 23 instruments, violins, cellos, trumpets, clarinets, and even a small drum kit, all slightly used but professionally refurbished, worth over $15,000. Marcus had volunteered to transport them in his bus, knowing how much this meant to the community. As they loaded the cases into the bus's rear storage compartments, Principal Martinez had chatted about her plans for the program. "Mrs. Patterson says she can start lessons next week if we get approval from the district. Can you imagine these kids haven't had access to instruments since I started here 5 years ago?" Marcus had smiled, remembering his own daughter Sophia's face when she'd played violin for the first time. She was 17 now, a senior at Roosevelt High, and she still credited that first violin lesson with changing her life's direction. She was applying to Juilliard this year, her college essays filled with dreams of becoming a music teacher in underserved communities. That's when Karen Whitmore had appeared. Karen lived in the Estates, the gated community that bordered the school district, but contributed nothing to its funding. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and her mouth was already twisted into its familiar expression of disapproval. She drove a white BMW X5 with custom license plates that read Blessed One, and she never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about her husband's position as senior vice president at Meridian Capital. "What's all this?" she had demanded, gesturing at the instrument cases with one perfectly manicured fingernail painted in aggressive red. "Musical instruments for the children, Mrs. Whitmore." Principal Martinez had replied, her voice carefully neutral. "A generous donation from the Harmony Foundation." "And why is he transporting them?" Karen's gaze had fixed on Marcus with undisguised suspicion. Shouldn't valuable items like this be handled by proper security? Marcus had felt the familiar knot forming in his stomach. In 6 months of driving this route, Karen had filed 17 complaints against him. His prosthetic made him unsafe. His Latino surname made parents uncomfortable. His military background was concerning. Each complaint had been investigated and dismissed, but they kept coming. A steady drip of poison designed to erode his employment. "Mr. Rodriguez is our most reliable driver," Principal Martinez had said firmly. "These instruments will be in excellent hands." Karen's eyes had narrowed further, and she'd pulled out her phone, snapping photos of the cases being loaded. "We'll see about that. Those cases could contain anything. Absolutely anything." Now, as Marcus guided Bus 47 toward the shoulder of Interstate 95, those words echoed in his mind with terrifying clarity. Through his radio, he could hear the chaos spreading across the emergency frequencies. All units. We have a code red on I-95 southbound. Possible weapons trafficking involving a school bus. Repeat. Children on board. Approach with extreme caution. Air support is en route. Highway patrol is setting up roadblocks at exits 17 through 24. ATF tactical team is 2 minutes out. Be advised. Suspect may be armed and desperate. Armed and desperate, Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity. The most dangerous thing in his possession was a half-eaten turkey sandwich and his daughter's spare inhaler. But laughter died in his throat as he watched the tactical vehicles take positions around his bus, their occupants emerging with weapons drawn. Behind him, the children were becoming increasingly agitated. 7-year-old Maria Gonzalez was hyperventilating, her tiny chest rising and falling rapidly as tears streamed down her cheeks. Her older brother Carlos put a protective arm around her shoulders, his 10-year-old face trying to project a confidence he clearly didn't feel. "Mr. Marcus," Carlos called out, his voice cracking. "Are we in trouble? Did we do something wrong?" "No, mijo. You didn't do anything wrong. None of you did. This is just a big mistake, and we're going to fix it right now." But fixing it wouldn't be simple. Through his side mirror, Marcus could see Agent Harrison approaching, his Kevlar vest catching the morning sunlight, his hand resting on his service weapon. Behind him, news helicopters were already circling like electronic buzzards, their cameras broadcasting this nightmare to the world. Marcus's radio crackled to life with the voice of dispatch supervisor Janet Mills, a woman who had become something of a surrogate mother to the district's drivers. "Bus 47, this is Control. Marcus, honey, can you hear me?" Marcus keyed his microphone. "I'm here. Janet, the kids are scared, but everyone's safe." "I know, sweetheart. I've got Principal Martinez and Superintendent Davis en route. We're going to sort this out. Do you have any idea what triggered this?" Marcus glanced toward the news helicopters, then at the tactical officers taking positions around his bus. How could he explain Karen Whitmore's vendetta without sounding paranoid? How could he make anyone understand the systematic campaign of harassment that had led to this moment? I think so. Janet, it's about the instrument donation. Someone called it in as something else. The line was quiet for a moment before Janet's voice returned, heavy with understanding and anger. Karen Whitmore. I can't prove that. You don't need to, honey. Half the district knows her game by now. But proving it and stopping this circus are two different things. Right now, we need to keep you and those babies safe. Agent Harrison reached the driver's side door and rapped on the window with his knuckles. His face was professionally stern, but Marcus caught something in his eyes that might have been sympathy. Sir, I need you to open this door and step out of the vehicle with your hands visible. Marcus took a deep breath and looked back at his passengers. 37 pairs of eyes stared back at him, some filled with tears, others with confusion, all of them trusting him to make this nightmare end. In the back row, 8-year-old Destiny Williams raised her small hand. Mr. Marcus, my mama says when you're scared, you should think about something beautiful. What's something beautiful? Marcus smiled, despite everything. Music, baby girl. I'm thinking about beautiful music. He opened the door and stepped out onto the asphalt, his prosthetic clicking softly as he raised both hands. Around him, the interstate had been transformed into a war zone. Traffic was backed up for miles in both directions. Emergency vehicles formed a perimeter that stretched across 4 lanes, and somewhere overhead, the news helicopters continued their electronic vulture dance. Sir, I'm Agent Harrison, ATF. We've received reports that this vehicle is being used to transport illegal weapons. I need you to remain calm and cooperate fully. Agent Harrison, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. My name is Marcus Rodriguez. I'm a school bus driver for Metro District. These children are on their way to school, and the only things in the storage compartments are musical instruments donated by the Harmony Foundation. Agent Harrison's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught a flicker of something. Doubt recognition. It was impossible to tell. Mr. Rodriguez, I understand your position, but we have to investigate every credible threat. The report we received was very specific about weapons being transported in instrument cases. Very specific. Marcus felt cold understanding wash over him. This wasn't just a panicked call from someone who saw something suspicious. This was detailed, planned, designed to trigger exactly this response. Agent Harrison, can I ask who made this report? I'm not at liberty to discuss the source of our intelligence at this time. But Marcus didn't need him to. Somewhere out there, probably watching this unfold on the news with smug satisfaction, Karen Whitmore was getting exactly what she wanted: his humiliation, his termination, and his removal from her school district. The sound of approaching vehicles made both men look up. A convoy of black SUVs was racing down the shoulder, their emergency lights painting the morning in urgent reds and blues. The lead vehicle bore the seal of the Metro School District, and Marcus felt a surge of relief as he recognized Superintendent Patricia Davis emerging from the passenger seat. Dr. Davis was a formidable woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, and eyes that had seen every trick in the education book. She had been fighting for underfunded schools for 30 years, and she didn't intimidate easily. Agent Harrison, she called out as she strode across the asphalt, her heels clicking authoritatively. Dr. Patricia Davis, Metro School District. What's the status here? Ma'am, We're investigating reports of weapons trafficking. I'll need you to maintain a safe distance while we... Agent Harrison? Dr. Davis's voice could have frozen water. That bus contains 37 children under my care and responsibility. My driver, Mr. Rodriguez, is transporting musical instruments donated to our music program. I have documentation, receipts, and a complete inventory of everything on that bus. Now, how quickly can we resolve this misunderstanding and get these children to school? Behind her, Principal Martinez was approaching with a thick folder of paperwork, her face flushed with anger and determination. She had clearly been running, and her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled from the rush to get here. I have the Harmony Foundation donation documentation, she called out, waving the folder. Complete inventory, photographs, serial numbers for every instrument. This is absolutely ridiculous. Agent Harrison looked between the three adults, then at the bus, where 37 young faces pressed against windows, some still crying, others filming everything on phones that would upload these images to social media within minutes. This was already a public relations disaster, and everyone knew it. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but we have to follow protocol. We've received very specific intelligence about weapons being transported in instrument cases. Until we can verify the contents of those cases, then let's verify them. Dr. Davis's tone brooked no argument. Open the cases. Check every single instrument, but do it quickly, and do it here, where these children can see that their teacher, their driver, and their school system did nothing wrong. The next 20 minutes unfolded like a surreal performance piece. Under the watchful eyes of news cameras, emergency responders, and 37 increasingly bewildered children, ATF agents carefully removed each instrument case from Bus 47's storage compartments. They arranged them on a tarp beside the bus, their movements professional but somehow apologetic. Inside the bus, the children watched with growing excitement as the cases were opened one by one. A violin emerged first, its polished wood gleaming in the morning sunlight. Then a trumpet, its brass surface catching the light like gold. A small cello, a clarinet, a flute that made 8-year-old Emma Patterson gasp with delight. Look, look. Tommy Chen pressed his face to the window. It's like a treasure chest. Agent Harrison examined each instrument with the thoroughness his training demanded. But Marcus could see the man's professional composure cracking. With each beautiful instrument revealed, with each child's squeal of excitement from the bus windows, the absurdity of the situation became more apparent. Dr. Davis stood beside the tarp with her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of vindication and barely contained fury. Agent Harrison, as you can see, Mr. Rodriguez was telling the truth. These are musical instruments, donated instruments, for children who have had no access to music education for 3 years because our district can't afford it. The final case contained the drum kit, and when Agent Harrison opened it, 6-year-old Marcus Jr., no relation to the driver, but everyone called him Little Marcus, let out a whoop that could be heard across the interstate. Mr. Marcus, there's drums, real drums. Agent Harrison straightened up, his face flushed with embarrassment and something that looked like anger. Mr. Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. These are clearly musical instruments, exactly as you stated. He paused, looking at the chaos around them, the backed-up traffic, the news helicopters, the crying children. I have to ask, do you have any idea who might have made this report? The caller was very specific about weapons being hidden in instrument cases. Before Marcus could answer, a new voice cut through the morning air like a blade. This is absolutely unacceptable. Unacceptable. Karen Whitmore was striding across the interstate, having somehow talked her way past the police perimeter. She moved with the aggressive confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way, her designer purse swinging with each angry step. Agent Harrison, I hope you're conducting a thorough investigation. Just because they've put musical instruments on top doesn't mean there's nothing hidden underneath. The entire scene seemed to freeze. Dr. Davis turned slowly to face Karen, her expression shifting from professional calm to something much more dangerous. Agent Harrison's eyes narrowed as he studied the newcomer, and Marcus felt everything click into place like puzzle pieces forming a picture he really didn't want to see. Ma'am, Agent Harrison said carefully, are you the individual who contacted our tip line this morning? Karen's chin lifted defiantly. I'm a concerned citizen. I saw suspicious activity, and I reported it. That's what responsible people do. Suspicious activity. Dr. Davis's voice was deadly quiet. Mrs. Whitmore, would you care to explain exactly what you found suspicious about a school bus driver loading donated musical instruments? The cases were military style, obviously designed to conceal weapons, and him. She pointed an accusatory finger at Marcus. He has a military background. Everyone knows veterans can be unstable, especially disabled ones. They get desperate. They get involved with criminal elements. That's enough. Agent Harrison's voice cut through Karen's tirade like a knife. Ma'am, I need to see some identification. As Karen fumbled in her purse for her ID, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. She was filming. Her phone was in her other hand. Camera focused on the bus, on the crying children, on the chaos she had created. She wasn't just documenting this. She was enjoying it. Dr. Davis had noticed the same thing. Mrs. Whitmore, are you recording this incident? It's a public street. I have every right to... Turn off that camera. Agent Harrison's tone left no room for argument. This is an active investigation involving minors. Recording is prohibited. Karen's face flushed red with anger and defiance. You can't tell me what to do. I know my rights. My husband is Stephen Whitmore from Meridian Capital, and we have lawyers. Ma'am, turn off the camera now, or you'll be charged with obstruction and interference with a federal investigation. The recording stopped, but the damage was done. Karen had what she wanted: footage of Marcus in handcuffs. He wasn't, but the angles would make it look that way. Children crying. Chaos at his school. This would be on social media within minutes, edited to make him look guilty of something. But Agent Harrison wasn't finished. Mrs. Whitmore, I need to ask you some specific questions about your report this morning. You mentioned weapons hidden in instrument cases. That's a very specific allegation. Where did you get that information? For the first time since she'd appeared, Karen looked uncertain. I saw them loading suspicious cases. Heavy cases. Military-style cases. It was obvious something was wrong. Ma'am, musical instrument cases often resemble equipment cases. That's not unusual. But your report specifically mentioned weapons trafficking, gang connections, and a detailed description of how weapons might be concealed in instruments. That suggests either very specific knowledge or... Agent Harrison let the implication hang in the air. Marcus watched Karen's face as understanding dawned. She had been too specific, too detailed. Her report hadn't been the panicked call of a concerned citizen. It had been the calculated accusation of someone who wanted to cause maximum damage. Dr. Davis stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of 3 decades in education. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is the 18th complaint you filed against Mr. Rodriguez in 6 months. Every single one has been investigated and found to be without merit. Every single one has cost our district time, money, and resources we can't afford to waste. And now this." She gestured at the chaos around them, the backed-up traffic, the news helicopters, the tactical vehicles, the 37 terrified children who should have been in their classrooms learning multiplication tables and reading stories. "This incident will cost the state hundreds of thousands of dollars in emergency response. It will traumatize children who have done nothing wrong. It will damage the reputation of an exemplary employee who has served his community with honor, both in military service and civilian life. All because you decided to weaponize a false report to the authorities." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This is discrimination. You're attacking me because I care about school safety, because I have standards." "No, Mrs. Whitmore." Agent Harrison's voice was now ice-cold professional. "We're investigating you because filing false reports to federal agencies is a serious crime. And based on the pattern Dr. Davis has described, this appears to be harassment, not genuine concern." The color drained from Karen's face as the reality of her situation began to sink in. Around them, the various emergency personnel were beginning the complex process of standing down from a crisis that should never have happened. Traffic was slowly beginning to move again. The news helicopters were pulling back to a respectful distance. But inside Bus 47, something beautiful was happening. While the adults had been sorting out the mess outside, Principal Martinez had climbed onto the bus to comfort the children. She had brought several of the smaller instruments with her, a violin, a flute, a small percussion set, and was showing them to the fascinated kids. "This violin is probably 60 years old," she was explaining to Amy Peterson, who had stopped crying and was now staring at the instrument with wonder. "See how the wood has this golden color that comes from being played and loved for decades." Tommy Chen was examining the flute with the intensity of a scientist studying a new species. "Mrs. Martinez, can I learn to play this? My mom always said music was too expensive. But if the school has them now, every single one of you will have the chance to learn. Tommy, that's what these instruments are for. Mr. Marcus made sure of that." Little Marcus had his hands pressed against the window, watching the drum kit being carefully repacked outside. "When can we play them? When can we make music?" "Next week, baby. Mrs. Patterson is going to start music classes next week." The sound of sirens was fading now, replaced by the normal sounds of morning traffic and children's excited chatter about the instruments they'd just seen. Marcus climbed back onto his bus, his prosthetic hand shaking slightly from the adrenaline that was finally beginning to subside. "All right, kids, adventure's over. Time to get you to school so you can start learning about these beautiful instruments." But as he settled into his driver's seat and began the familiar routine of checking mirrors and adjusting his seat, Marcus caught sight of Karen Whitmore in his peripheral vision. She was standing beside a police cruiser now, Agent Harrison and a state trooper flanking her as she spoke rapidly into her phone. Her free hand was gesturing wildly, and even through the closed windows of the bus, her voice carried a tone of desperation and anger. "Stephen, you have to do something. They're treating me like a criminal. I was protecting children. I was being a responsible citizen." Dr. Davis appeared at Marcus's driver's side window, tapping gently on the glass. When he opened it, she leaned in with a smile that was both weary and triumphant. "Marcus, I want you to take the rest of the day off. Paid leave. After what you've been through this morning, you deserve to go home. Hug your daughter, and remember that there are good people in this world. Dr. Davis, I'm fine. Really. I'd rather get these kids to school and try to make this morning feel normal again. She studied his face for a moment, then nodded. All right. But Marcus, this stops here. Karen Whitmore will never file another complaint against you or any other employee in this district. I guarantee it. As Bus 47 pulled away from the shoulder and merged back into traffic, Marcus could see the resolution of the morning's drama playing out in his mirrors. Karen was being placed in the back of a police cruiser, her designer purse clutched to her chest, her perfectly styled hair beginning to show signs of stress. Agent Harrison was speaking with Dr. Davis, both of them looking serious and official. But inside the bus, the mood had completely transformed. The children were buzzing with excitement about the instruments, making plans about which ones they wanted to learn, asking Marcus questions about music and whether he played any instruments himself. "Mr. Marcus," called out Destiny Williams, the little girl who had asked him to think about something beautiful. "Are you going to learn music with us?" Marcus smiled, thinking about the guitar that sat in his apartment, the one he'd learned to play during his recovery, the one that had taught him that losing a hand didn't mean losing the ability to create beautiful things. "You know what, Destiny, I think I might—" The rest of the drive to school passed in a blur of excited chatter and planning. By the time they pulled into the Riverside Elementary parking lot, the children had already formed informal groups based on the instruments they wanted to learn. The violin group, led by Amy Peterson. The brass section, with Tommy Chen as their unofficial trumpet ambassador. The percussion crew, with little Marcus as their very enthusiastic drummer. As the children filed off the bus, each one thanked Marcus with a sincerity that made his chest tight with emotion. These weren't just passengers he transported from home to school and back again. They were his kids, his responsibility, his daily reminder that some jobs were about much more than just earning a paycheck. Principal Martinez was waiting in the parking lot with Mrs. Patterson, the music teacher who would be starting the program. Mrs. Patterson was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and hands that moved like they were always conducting invisible orchestras. She had volunteered to come out of retirement to teach these children, asking for nothing more than the chance to share her love of music with a new generation. "Mr. Rodriguez," Mrs. Patterson said as Marcus finished his post-trip inspection, "I want to thank you, not just for transporting the instruments, but for making this whole program possible. Your letter to the Harmony Foundation, your passion for these children, that's what made this happen." Marcus felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Mrs. Patterson, you're the one who's going to teach them. You're the one with the real skills." "Skills can be taught, Mr. Rodriguez. But heart, caring enough to write letters and make phone calls and fight for children who aren't even your own, that can't be taught. That's just who you are." As Marcus drove the empty bus back to the district garage, he reflected on the morning's events. In the space of 3 hours, he had been accused of weapons trafficking, surrounded by federal agents, and subjected to a very public investigation that had undoubtedly been broadcast live on every news channel in the city. 6 months of Karen Whitmore's harassment had culminated in the most humiliating and terrifying experience of his civilian life. But he had also witnessed something beautiful. He had seen Dr. Davis and Principal Martinez fight for him with the ferocity of lionesses protecting their cubs. He had watched Agent Harrison transform from suspicious federal agent to apologetic public servant as the truth became clear. Most importantly, he had seen 37 children discover the magic of musical instruments. their eyes lighting up with possibilities they had never imagined. The afternoon news would tell the story differently. Of course. False terror alert shuts down Interstate. School bus driver cleared of weapons charges. Federal resources wasted on bogus tip. The headlines would focus on the drama, the waste, the spectacular failure of the system to distinguish between genuine threats and malicious harassment. But Marcus knew the real story. The real story was about 37 children who would start learning music next week. It was about a community that had rallied to protect one of its own. It was about the difference between people who built things up and people who tore things down. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter Sophia. "Dad, saw the news. Are you okay? I'm so proud of how you handled everything. Love you." Marcus smiled as he typed back, "I'm fine, Mija. Can't wait to tell you about the instruments. Maybe you can come help Mrs. Patterson with the violin students." Her response was immediate. "Already called Principal Martinez. I start volunteering Monday." By the time Marcus reached the garage, news vans were already waiting. He parked bus 47 in its usual spot, completed his paperwork with the same methodical precision he brought to every aspect of his job, and prepared to face the cameras and questions that would define how this story was told to the world. But first, he sat in his driver's seat for a moment longer, thinking about beautiful music and the children who would soon fill the air with it. Thinking about Karen Whitmore, who would now face the consequences of weaponizing fear and prejudice. Thinking about communities that protected their own and the people who dedicated their lives to building rather than destroying. Tomorrow morning, he would be back in this seat, driving Route 47, picking up 37 children who would be one day closer to their first music lesson. The thought filled him with a quiet joy that no amount of harassment could diminish. Because some things were stronger than hate. Some things were worth fighting for. And sometimes, justice arrived wearing the uniform of a federal agent who was professional enough to admit when he was wrong, wise enough to see the difference between truth and malice, and decent enough to make sure the right story got told. The music program at Riverside Elementary would begin on schedule. Karen Whitmore would face federal charges for filing false reports and harassment. And 37 children would discover that sometimes the most beautiful things in life came disguised as ordinary instrument cases on an ordinary Tuesday morning that turned extraordinary through the simple act of one person caring enough to make a difference. Marcus Rodriguez climbed down from bus 47 for the last time that day, his prosthetic hand steady on the rail, his heart full of quiet satisfaction. Tomorrow there would be music. Today, there had been justice. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything.